enjoying it. I don't think there's a bad seat in this house. I think you can see this, no matter where you are, you can see the depth in this, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Works beautifully well. I'm so happy with that. This was taken with a beam splitter in a limo, and in those days we all travel around in one limo because this is budget touring in the beginning. You know? But we're already in New York, enjoying being rock stars in a sense. We're penniless, but we're nevertheless enjoying it. And, so I'm sort of behind the front seat in the limo. Freddie's in the back, and you can see this glass of champagne. I think it's champagne here, and. This is where it gets personal, you know. To me, it's very emotional seeing this because I can feel like I'm there still. I don't know if you have that same experience, but I just feel like I'm right there, and it's much more evocative than any kind of flat picture could be. I'm going to keep on evangelizing for stereo. So yeah, this is proof that we're all in the same limo. But we're enjoying it, except for Deaky, who looks very suspicious of the whole thing. Roger's definitely enjoying it because Roger is a rock star. So the nice thing about these is I'm still looking at these and finding things that I haven't seen before. That's the thing about stereo. I think you look into the background and see things that are going on. And it's very evocative for me. Okay, a young me. You're very responsive. Thank you so much. I didn't expect all this. I would be silent. You know. I'm going to move over here. This is what I would do at concerts was give the camera to somebody. So I gave the camera in this instance to one of our promotion men, and he took some pictures. I had to try and explain to him not to put the camera on its side because stereo cameras don't work on their sides. But on the whole, he managed to do that. But here I am with the red special that me and my dad made, and it's still with me. We just did 26 dates of the US. I don't know if any of you saw it. Thank you. And it was great, and this is the guitar that's with me the whole time, and presumably always will be, I hope. It'll last just about as long as I do, I think. Here's Roger, and again taken by the promotion guy, who probably was in the front row, because this is quite a little bit of stereo in this. And interesting, you can see that the drumstick has moved a little bit between shots, which shouldn't happen, right? But it happens because the shutters are not quite synchronized with each other. And the focus isn't too great, but I love this because it's one of the earliest pictures I've ever seen of Roger in stereo on stage. Here's another one. In my fabulous Sandra Rhodes outfit.
Yes, sir.
Now the trouble with playing guitar is that you can't kind of be spreading your arms the whole time to show the wonderful wings of this outfit, whereas Freddie can ponce about all over the place and do that. So I'm relatively modest. And in those days I didn't move around much anyway. I think, you know, we were evolving. I only kind of learned to be physical when the audience got physical. It's a strange thing. I think you grow into these things. But there we are. Now this is touring in the States. And it was always winter, it was always snowing and freezing cold. Here we are arriving at a radio station to do interviews, which we would do. Procedure would be we fly in, we go and do a couple of radio stations, which means we go on the air live and talk to the DJ, sometimes take some calls from the fans on the phone, and then we go and do a sound check, and then we do the gig, and we go to the hotel, and the whole thing starts all over again. But I like this just because the atmosphere is all there. We were always freezing, and Freddie being a fashion victim, never dresses up, you know, he doesn't care. He'd rather freeze than not look good. I should have put that in the book. See, whereas me, I like to keep warm. You know, I was a bit shy of having a sheepskin jacket because, you know, I think the beginnings of awareness about animals were there with me. But this is a sort of woolly jacket, which just about kept me warm. And the thing about stereo is you can see Roger behind and Deaky behind that as well. Don't know who took the picture, but they did a nice job of composition. Hope I'm not going too fast with these. Are you okay?
We're good, we're good.
A young Bri. There's young Rog relaxing with his bottle within reach. I was grabbing a little bit of winter sunshine because it's still winter out there, but we'll see something.
His bottle within
He's wearing
reach.
a tour jacket from one of the promoters. And you can see right up his nose there, so I thought it was really good. It's one of my favourites because this is really glamorous. I I love the incongruity of the fact that Freddie is on there being a peacock on stage, but off stage he's looking very much like his mum under the hair. And it looks, there's a kind of Wayne's World thing about this, because it looks like it's kind of sucking instead of blowing.
Ah, yes.
You know how that happened, so it really did suck. Getting back there. And again, it was freezing cold. You can just about see the snow outside. It was freezing still this time, and we were sort of back in these horrendous places where the backstage is non-existent. And we're trying to get ourselves ready, looking like $1 million. Here he is doing his exercises. Freddie on the clothes receptacle, whatever it is. Yeah, you like doing that. Freddie always was into keeping fit, which is great, and he got incredibly fit on tour. Okay, this relates to all you lovely stereo geeks here, of which I am one. You know, when I got into a city, generally I would go off and find camera stores and second-hand bits and pieces and photo dealers and stuff, whereas the others would go off and find guitars. I'm a guitarist, but I, for some reason, don't do that. And this is something which is a priceless treasure, which I just bought in a local antique shop, or a photo antique shop. This is actually a transposing a stereoscope. You can just see there's a system of prisms on here, so you can look at your stereo pictures without cutting them. The old glass stereo pictures, but that's me. Okay, in case you were wondering, this is the camera which took a lot of the pictures that you're looking at. It's a stereo realist, and it was created in the 1950s, really to make stereo available to everyone. And it's the first time it ever happened. I should give you a little bit of history, but I don't want to hold things up too much. Stereoscopy was discovered by Charles Wheatstone in the 1830s. Think about that, 1830. You know, this is pre-photographs. There was no photography in 1830. But he grasps this concept that we need two eyes to see stereo, and if you can reproduce this in some kind of picture, then you can reproduce the feeling of stereoscopy. 100 years later, in the 1950s, there's a resurgence of stereoscopic interest, and these things are largely responsible. I mean, Viewmaster did a great deal because they carried the torch, but with this thing, you could actually take your own stereo photographs, and thousands and hundreds of thousands, probably millions of people did, including some of the great Hollywood stars of the day, like Lucille Ball and Buster Keaton, who chronicled the growth of their family using this instrument. And you can see some of their pictures in exhibitions. There used to be one in Universal, but I think it's gone now. But it's a wonderful camera, and it just does it all. There's no light meters, there's no auto anything. You have to focus, and this thing in the middle is not a lens, it's a viewfinder. And you manually set the shutter speed, you manually set the aperture, and you click away and you hope you get something, but you don't know if you got something until it comes back from the processors. That's the funny thing. It was all very risky in those days. This is the gear that goes with it. You know, when you get your stuff back, here's your film that comes back. You have to cut it up with this machine here. You then mount it in these cardboard mounts, and you put it in these viewers. Now, this stereo realist viewer is a very fine piece of equipment, and it gives you a very realistic 3D view. And if you look at Oliver's exhibition after this talk, you'll see some of these things in action. And here's the wonderful picture, the wonderful camera. This idea was copied by a lot of other people, and even Kodak came out with a very nice stereo camera a few years later. Some of the pictures Denise just put this in for me. Some of the pictures in this book were not taken with a stereo camera, but were taken by a normal mono camera, like a single lens reflex, but with this device on the front of it. This is a beam splitter, has 4 mirrors in it, and what it does is convert your camera from mono into stereo. It's a little imperfect, so you have to do a lot of processing afterwards, but a lot of the pictures you'll see in this talk and in the book were made with this beam splitter or something similar. Oh, that's too fast. Okay, back out on the road. This is John, the lovely John Deacon, who sadly I never see these days because he's become very reclusive. But here he is in fine form, and he's comparing his stereoscopic self with his mono self down here. And enjoying it. He got into it. He took a lot of stereo pictures himself, John, and enjoyed it. So I'd love to see those sometime. Maybe he'll do a book, I don't know. This is a funny occasion. Obviously, we're not experts at tennis. You can probably see by the gear. But we did some sort of tennis exhibition for the visiting journalists from Japan. You'll see them, and they're from this wonderful magazine called Music Life in Japan. They came over to do pictures while we were rehearsing and recording in Rockfield, in Ridge Farm Studios, which is a kind of rural residential studio. So here we are pretending to play tennis. And here I am. Freddie looks particularly fine in that gear, I think. Freddie was actually not that great as a tennis player, but he was a demon at table tennis. He would slaughter any comer in table tennis. Freddie only liked to play games that he could win. Which is probably a good lesson to us all. Here's Deke, who can't be bothered, and he's just relaxing out here on the grass. It's taken through the tennis fence, of course, and that plays tricks with your eyes, as it would do in real life. You can kind of sometimes fuse the tennis fence and sometimes not. And those of us who got kind of bitten by the stereo bug always spend our time with repetitive wallpapers, trying to make it fuse in different ways, making the wall appear that it's closer to us and stuff. And so you can do that with tennis fences as well. Here's Rog. I rather like this because it's in a photo session for Music Life. These are the Japanese people. And I like the composition because you've got good foreground here and then this little chair thing, and you've got Roger here just about to fall in the pool. And you've got the nice stuff behind. But I have in the book, I don't think we have it here in this presentation, but I have the picture that was being taken of Roger at the time, taken from the other side. And so that all fits in. Here we have me kind of stepping out of the photo session just to do my stereo thing. And here again you have the different planes. You have the photographer in the front, you have the three guys right here, and then you have this whole other thing going on in the background, this very beautiful residential place that we're in. So I love stereo because it gives you these different, it gives you the extra dimension, which you can get lost in. Is Rog playing a guitar? Roger spends a lot of time playing guitar. He also spends a lot of time collecting them, which I don't. I can't collect stereo and stereos, but he's lost in it here. He's kind of being a hippie here, And here we are in the studio. I think this is Rockfield. I have to look at the book to check, but he's doing his thing here, and a little bit blurred, but there's nice kind of interest in the stereo here with all the lights and everything.